Welcome everybody to the February 18th, 2025 meeting of the Tompkins County Legislature. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have the roll call of members, please?
Amanda Champion.
Here.
Susan Curry.
Here.
Deborah Dawson.
Here.
Rich John. Here. Ian Corman is asked to be excused tonight. Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi.
Here.
Veronica Pillar.
Here.
Lee Shirtliff.
Here.
Mike Sigler.
Here.
Shauna Black.
Here.
Travis Brooks.
Here.
Randy Brown.
Here.
Dan Klein.
Here.
13 members present.
We have a quorum. There are no proclamations or petitions tonight, but we do have a special announcement, and to do that announcement is Susan Curry. Susan, you're on.
Yes, I had the great honor of being on the search committee for our next Poet Laureate. We had a really good committee. We had a good number of applicants. And we have with us here tonight Megan Barber, who's the Executive Director of Community Arts Partnership, and they ran the search. Robin Schwartz was the chair of that, and she did a great job. And I'm delighted to announce that our new Poet Laureate is here. His name is Dan Rosenberg, and he was a professor at Wells College. But I looked at his resume. He has so many publications and so many wonderful presentations. I couldn't possibly list them all, but he came up with a wonderful list of presentations and suggestions for serving as Poet Laureate. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. So welcome, Dan.
Thanks so much. It's really an honor to be here. I'm honored to pick up where my wonderful predecessors have left off. I don't know that I can be quite as active as my immediate predecessor. Jeannie seemed to do an overwhelming number of things, but I will do my very best. I'm really honored to be chosen for this role, and I'm really proud to be in a community that has such a role at all, right? Because to have a Poet Laureate is to make a commitment, through you, our representatives, to the value of poetry, which can slow us down, help us reflect, expand our empathy, which are things that I think are going to just be more and more necessary in the coming years. So thank you for promoting these values through this position and for entrusting me with this role for the next little bit. I'll just read one quick poem for you all from my most recent book. It's called Bassinet, and I chose this poem, which is entitled Buttermilk Falls, because it takes place here, right? Do you need to know anything? No, you're fine. We'll do this. Buttermilk Falls. We step on barren stones while between them the cracks teem with small living. A game we play, who can leave the world most undisturbed? The water says be like water, leave the slowest fingerprint, but we can barely hear it over the falls. The pebbles blunt their edges on our heels. We are sediment, two accidental statues, me and my son, unsteady on the rump of summer. What counts as life in the slush and wash around us? The star moss wept somehow against my ankle, and I seem now more of this place than I was, undivorced from stem and root, untroubled as a stalagmite under a generous sun. I bend beside my son, balance stone upon stone. The moss remains, luminous and still. We make a home for it, and it survives. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dan. And it was also appropriate because you slipped the word slush in there.
As in fund?
All right. Well, we look forward to touching base with you further throughout the year. Next up is, executive sessions. We will have 2 executive sessions tonight, a short one and a long one, and I will announce what those are for later on. And now we're moving on to privilege of the floor. We'll start with privilege of the floor for the public. If you're interested in speaking tonight, please go to the back of the room and fill out one of these blue forms. They're back there. Bring it right up to us and we'll get you in the queue. If you're interested in speaking tonight, you are agreeing to the following rules. I agree to a 3-minute time limit. I agree not to raise my voice. I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. I agree to be courteous and not make comments, gestures, outbursts, or other disruptions while other members of the public or legislators are speaking. I agree that if I cause a disruption and I'm asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. First up is James Smith.
Hi, James Smith, paramedic. I just returned from a wake from a firefighter killed in Binghamton in the act of duty. It reminds us how important public safety is. I'm here again to talk about bringing the fly cars into the city of Ithaca when the Ithaca Fire Department doesn't respond. One of the ways that this impacts the county, Ithaca Fire is great, and so are your EMS people in helping us package people, get them out of the house in a timely manner. But they may or may not respond when Dryden or Trumansburg ambulances are asked to come into the city. If it's important enough for them to come into the city, shouldn't it be important enough for the fire department to respond, to assist them so they have a faster turnaround time to get back into service? Ithaca Fire has never done lifting assistance. With the county, I frequently have been canceled responding to lifting assistance while responding in an ambulance and been able to respond to another call. If fire did lifting assistance, that might help ambulances be available to other people in the county. I've brought this up for 2 years with the city. A year ago, I sent all the dispatch codes that the city no longer responds to all the council people, including Mr. Cool, the mayor, and the city manager. Margaret DeFribio asked how many calls that would entail and asked the city manager to find out. As far as I know, nothing's happened. Mr. Cool is here, so perhaps tonight you can ask him why fire stopped responding to these dispatch codes. What was the criteria to decide what dispatch codes were important enough to respond to and what were not responded to? Why has fire not started responding again to these codes? What has the council done in the last year to address these issues since I brought them up? He's had the dispatch codes. He knows what fire has not been responding to. He's professed an interest in EMS. It would be helpful to know this. Do I believe your fly car should have to come into the city? No. I'm just trying to get a public discussion going and inform people of the city of Ithaca what's happening, because I don't think a lot of them are informed. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to mention we did receive your emails today, this afternoon. I personally haven't had a chance to read them yet, but I definitely will. No, it's all good. Thank you. Thank you for doing it. Okay, next up is Zach Wynn.
Good evening. So more information about Jesus Romero Hernandez has come to light since his arrest by Ithaca and arrest by ICE in Ithaca late last month. A news story I have forwarded to you describes Romero Hernandez having been accused of at least 9 misdemeanors, 2 felonies, and having multiple arrest warrants. Among the charges were at least 3 different arrests related to family violence, along with battery and assault in Georgia in 2020. While in Tompkins County, Romero Hernandez was arrested at least 3 times. In March of 2022, prosecutors say he destroyed the inside of a hotel room in Lansing. I believe this might have been a Code Blue hotel room. In September of 2023, he was accused of putting a police officer in a chokehold during his arrest in the jungle, a sheriff's deputy, where he had been living. Then in November of 2023, he admitted to punching a corrections officer at the jail and biting their finger. So it was 2 county employees he had assaulted. Do any of you believe that he should have been allowed to remain free in the community had ICE not come to collect him? I invite you to consider how much Romero Hernandez's presence here in the county costs taxpayers. Using the figure of $247 a day, an old figure I found online for the cost of keeping an inmate in the jail for 1 day, multiplied by the approximately 488 days he spent in the jail, it works out to about $123,000 just to incarcerate him. Add to that figure the cost of his prosecution, the cost of his defense, which was most likely provided by a public defender, and the likely costs associated with housing him under Code Blue, the figure is easily more than $150,000. I have also forwarded you videos taken by the victim of an assault that occurred during the February 2nd protest that followed Romero Hernandez's arrest. The individual has filed a police report. This incident is part of a larger pattern of an intimidation and assault that frequently occurs in the city during the various protests and street takeovers that I have remarked upon previously. I ask the members of the legislature if you believe this conduct is acceptable behavior. I again request that you consider issuing a statement condemning behaviors at these protests that are illegal, such as assault and roadblocks, the accosting of peaceful bystanders in public spaces, and other activities intended to harass, silence, and intimidate those who are singled out by the mob. More of these incidents are certain to occur in the immediate future, and more frequently as the weather improves. Please use your positions to make it clear what is and is not acceptable behavior in the city streets. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak tonight? Mr. Lynch, are you down for the town of Enfield or as a citizen?
I can speak right now.
Okay, you're on.
Good evening, Robert Lynch, councilperson, town of Enfield. I'm speaking under the public privilege of the floor because I'm here to advocate a particular point, and it's regarding a matter that is before your legislature tonight. I urge you to support the resolution that would ask New York State for home rule legislation that would expand the Tompkins County Area Development, or should I say Industrial Development Agency, from 7 members to 9. I think that's a wise move to expand that particular agency, and I'll tell you why. For a long time, there have been several at-large members appointed, along with 3 at present, county legislators to the Industrial Development Agency. In some cases, it seems that local communities and local school boards have been shut out of the process, even though we have to compromise with our revenues when a pilot agreement is made, and in rural communities that is particularly important for solar developments, solar farms. This matter of expanding the membership of the agency was taken before the Housing and Economic Development Committee earlier this month. Fortunately, we had a unanimous vote in favor of that. I know there are some other legislators who may be skeptical of this improvement, and one of the concerns voiced was, well, will a local representative or a school board representative always say no to something because it might be against their own best financial interests? And I can tell you, as far as Enfield is concerned, we would not be an automatic no. We would have an open mind and look at these matters and decide whether it's in the best public interest overall in Tompkins County as to whether a particular pilot agreement would be engineered and be approved. And so I encourage you to put this before the state legislature. I hope the state legislature will approve it. And after that, we can figure out exactly how we're going to structure these additional members. I like how the committee has come up with an idea. It's diversity. It would say we're going to create more at-large positions, and we will decide later how exactly we can fill them and how best they should be filled with a diverse representation of the community. This is diversity. This is inclusion. It is giving many voices a chance to be heard, and it's allowing school districts and rural towns like ours to be heard. And I hope you will adopt this measure tonight. tonight. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Okay, next up is privilege of the floor from municipal officials, and we have two representatives from the City of Ithaca Common Council. We have Patrick Keel and Pierre St. Perez. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
As always, good to see you guys. The city has been, at least Common Council, has been mainly engaged in discussions over our building inspection fee structure and specific zoning concerns, particularly in College Town. Essentially, inspection fees, we are looking at possible restructures that will cover more of the costs of running the inspection program. And we're looking at some developments that have happened in College Town that are perhaps not, that while they are up to zoning code, are not perhaps what was intended when we created the zoning in those areas. It's fascinating stuff, and I'm sure you all wish that you had land use authority.
Yes, I wasn't actually planning on speaking tonight. I was just going to let Pierre do the show, but I figured I would respond to Mr. Smith's comments. I actually had a really interesting and very productive conversation with the new Deputy City Manager for Public Safety, Dominic Recchio, who you all know so well. We were exploring options to expand fire service into those things, into those different call codes. As Mr. Smith has pointed out, a lot of those codes were discontinued during COVID. There's worries due to our staffing levels at the fire department that there's liability associated with a fire department vehicle being on the scene of an EMS call and not being able to respond to a fire. I personally think that there are ways that we could be able to address this via more staffing or maybe different vehicles. But those are conversations that will take significantly more time. I actually agree with everything that Mr. Smith said. I think that if the county has the possibility to allow its fly cars to come into the city to respond to calls that are waiting for an ambulance to be available, I think they absolutely should do that. Timely medical service is incredibly important, especially in instances of emergencies. And if there are ways that we can get people care more quickly and save lives, we absolutely should. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments for our City Council representatives? Rich.
Thanks for the attention on that issue. And I believe the fly cars have actually responded to calls in the city. They're not restricted from doing that. It's just their placement is surrounding the city, and usually, in almost all cases, there's faster response from a local source. But yes, I agree that all of the EMS services should be thinking about how can we work in cooperation and get to the people that need help as fast as possible.
Well, and I would also just advocate on behalf of myself personally, as well as I think this is something that the city as a policy has been kind of moving towards in the areas of homelessness, but the continuation of joint task force I think are really important. The more that we can be in contact, the more we can be working together rather than duplicating work, I think is really valuable, especially in circumstances that are countywide with city or county or city or village specific services. The more we can cooperate and I don't think share services is necessarily the right word, but make sure that we're working towards unified solutions, I think the better. So thank you again.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time. We're up to legislator privilege of the floor. Are there any legislators that would like to say something? Shauna Black.
Thank you, Dan. I received a letter in the mail a few days ago from one of our constituents, and she asked that I read the letter in our meeting tonight. And so I wanted to read that to all of our colleagues. Dear Tompkins County legislatures, my name is Keegan. I'm an 11-year-old transgender female who has been receiving gender-affirming care. I felt like a girl since I was 5 years old. although I started wearing dresses around when I was 3 years old. I am worried that I am not going to be able to get my gender care. If I do not get my gender care, I will have a volcano erupt inside me. I will be uncontrollably mad and sad. I feel like a girl, and I do not want that to be taken away from me. I appreciate the doctor, psychologist, and staff at the gender clinic that I go to because they understand who I am. I have seen the counselor at the clinic, and she helped me with my anxiety around people calling me a boy. The doctor is doing the blood work to see when I am in puberty. When I am in puberty, I would like to start puberty blockers so my voice and genitals don't change to the gender I don't feel I am. I am a musician, and I want my voice to be high-pitched like a girl. But if I am not able to receive gender care, my voice will be deeper. I am worried about not being able to use the girls' bathroom and my safety if my voice deepens like the voice of a male. Thank you for doing all that you can to make gender care still available to youth like me in New York State. I really appreciate the work that you are doing. Sincerely, Keegan Fitzgerald. So I just wanted to read that to my colleagues.
Any other legislators like to comment? Mike Lane.
It's the Bible that teaches us that for everything there is a season. Season to reap and a season to sow. And that's true of public service and elective office. I was first elected to the legislature in 1993. Back then it was called the Board of Representatives. I've served ever since, except one term when I was in the audience. I've had the honor of serving with no fewer than 50 representatives and trustees over the years. I counted them up. I thought that was kind of amazing. I've had the distinct honor and privilege to serve the people of the village of Freeville, the village of Dryden, and the area surrounding them in the town of Dryden. I've done my very best for them. I have never shied from taking stands that I thought were appropriate and in their best interest. I listened to them, I learned from them. Sometimes I went against what I personally thought because I felt that being a representative meant that I should try to represent the views of my constituents and of Tompkins County as a whole. But everything has a season, and at this point, I think the season is for me to say tonight that I don't intend to seek re-election to the legislature this fall. It's hard for me because if all things were equal, I'd sit here until they carried me out feet first, if that's what the people of my district wanted. But as I remember when I stopped and retired from being mayor of the village of Dryden, which wasn't easy either, that there's a time for these things. And so tonight, that's what I'm announcing. And with the greatest appreciation to the people of my district. And for the next 11 months, 11 and a half months, 10 and a half months, I guess it is, I will continue to do my utmost to represent them to the best of my ability. And to keep my oath of office, which is to preserve defend, and protect the Constitution of our United States. Yes, I'm a lower level elected official, but representing our people under our Constitution is so terribly important. And in these dark days when the Constitution sometimes seems extremely in jeopardy, each of us has to step forward and make that commitment. Thank you very much.
Mike Lane, our senior member of the legislature. Thank you for sharing that announcement. Veronica.
Mike, thank you for your long service, and if you need any hobby recommendations, let me know for next year.
Well, you already helped me with some math problems, so we appreciate it.
It's true. Yeah. I just wanted to say, Shauna, thanks for reading that letter, and to Keegan, who I don't know, thank you for writing it. I really admire your bravery and vulnerability. We don't get many messages from kids, and especially not that personal and vulnerable. So thank you.
Mike Sigler.
So I don't know how I'm going to follow Mike, but I'm going to try. I have actually a number of different items I wanted to talk about. Wanted to thank Cargill Salt Mine to start off with. Apparently there is a salt shortage in New York State. The company that had won the contract to supply New York State with salt has apparently come up short just because of the nature of this winter and how cold it is. Cargill has stepped in to fill that void for what's needed, and apparently has an increased price actually to do that. So I wanted to thank them. They're back to 5 days a week to pull that salt out of the ground. Number two, I get a good number of calls and I read a lot about NYSEG. Apparently a lot of people obviously are seeing their electric bills go up. I want to just let everybody know it is on our radar. We are definitely, I'm feeling the pinch too, as is everybody here at the table. And I know people want to blame somebody, and it's very easy to blame NYSEG because, you know, and I don't want to be known to be like the big defender of NYSEG here, but I think that when we assess what the problem is, it's important to know what the problem is. Otherwise, you're kind of just hitting the wrong target. NYSEG, when I'm looking at the bill, has it almost doubled? Yes, but I mean, I look at why has it almost doubled. Some of it is because of NYSEG, because they're being required to run new power lines down from Canada so that they can power New York City with hydro out of Quebec. But, and obviously they have to replace a lot of lines in New York State, and those people don't come cheaply. You know, I wouldn't want to be on a pole right now in the rain or the snow and replacing lines, and yet that's what these folks do. So, but a big part of it is supply, and that's what's really gone up in price and has almost doubled. And that, frankly, is because New York State has decided not to generate electricity in New York State and has decided to outstate that. And we just are not building power plants in this state, whether they be nuclear, natural gas. We're simply not doing it. And whenever you have the demand increase and the supply decrease, you're going to have spikes in prices. And that's what we're going through right now. I also wanted to talk about another state issue that I'm seeing, and it's Kathy Hochul today has said there's a prison strike right now. The guards are on strike. She is talking about bringing the National Guard into those prisons. I understand desperate times, desperate measures, but this is the second time I've seen Kathy Hochul bring the National Guard in to patrol something that citizens use, and that is a concern for me. When someone brings in the military to actually patrol New York citizens, and it's just something that worries me. And the first time it happened, when she did it with the subways, it concerned me, and now I see it happening again in the prison, and the military is just frankly not really equipped to patrol a prison. Can they do it? Yes, I mean, because they're going to have to, it seems. But I'm not sure that's how the National Guard should be used. And I hope she's taking a great deal of caution because, again, it is the second time she's doing that. Finally, I just want to wrap up. I lost somebody, just a tremendous person in Lansing on February 10th. His name is Gus Isaac, and he is our World War II veteran. He passed away at 101 years old. He, just a remarkable man, moved here, was Syrian, lived on Syrian Hill, was working down in the salt mines, decided to go enlist in World War II, was in combat for 2 years and 10 months of constant combat. Was in France and was in charge of putting up a bridge and was under heavy fire, and they were still able to put up that bridge. And for that, France awarded him the French Legion of Honor, which is their highest honor. It's the Congressional Medal of Honor for France. And I got to meet him, got to go to his 100th birthday party, and just a wonderful man to have, and really built his life in Lansing. His family still lives there, and there'll be his funeral is happening this spring. So just a huge loss to him, and I wanted to thank him for his service and thank his family for their investment in my community. So thank you very much.
Were there other legislators? Greg.
Save something later. Sure. First, Mike, thanks for your thoughtful announcement as the other representative for the crown jewel of the county. I know we've got a lot of work left to do over these next 10 months, but appreciate your leadership and wisdom that you brought to the job over the last 28 years here, 10 years as mayor, almost a 40-year public service career. So thank you again. On another note, I want to mention that the Ithaca Area Economic Development and the Tompkins Chamber have their 2025 Economic Summit. That's going to be March 6th from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that's going to be at Cinemapolis, I can never say that one right, and the Ithaca Downtown Conference Center. Also, if you've seen more teachers around this time of year, it's Ithaca Loves Teachers. That's something that the Visit Ithaca and the folks at the Chamber and CVB do. That runs from February 14th to the 28th. You can find out more online at ithacalovesteachers.com, but it's a way for teachers to take advantage of the winter break and come visit and experience and explore Ithaca. And then lastly, for those of us that live in or near Dryden, on February 27th from 9 to 10:30 a.m. at the Southworth Library, there's a community conversation hosted by the Chamber of Commerce. So a couple of dates to note and things to remember. So thank you.
Rich.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the announcement we just heard. And I certainly don't have any prepared statement, but I would like to just share that when I first thought I was going to run for office, I called Mike Lane and he said, come on out. And I drove to Dryden and sat, and he was really generous with his time to just explain the legislature to me and give me some idea what I was getting into. And that was not an anomaly. Throughout my time on the legislature, Mike Lane has been a tremendous resource to us, and again, very generous in helping other legislators do their jobs better. And in terms of an institutional source of knowledge, the history that he carries around with him, that's going to be really sorely missed. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying about there's a time, but wow, Mike, that was a big announcement. So thank you.
Mike Lane.
I just wanted to add a sad note, and that is a longtime employee of Tompkins County, Carl Burgess, recently passed away. He'd moved over to Cortland with his wife, Carol. Carol, who had been mayor of the village of Freeville many years ago. And I worked with both of them when there was something called the Dryden Wastewater Study Commission that helped to bring sewers to the village of Freeville. And but for those two of them and their work, it probably wouldn't have got there. Carl worked for our health department. He was the guy who went around and checked on restaurants, for example, to make sure that they were doing keeping their foods the right temperature, keeping cleanliness, storing the foods, and all those kinds of things, and publishing the reports so that we could understand where we went out to eat to make sure that it was a safe place to go. Carl Burgess was a veteran and served in Vietnam, and he was a credit to Tompkins County.
Deborah.
Thank you. For those who are interested in protesting the ascendant oligarchy, there will be a nationwide boycott on February 28th. Those who want to participate, don't buy anything. It's just one day. Don't buy anything. If you must buy anything, patronize local businesses. Thank you.
Susan.
I wanted to add my thanks to Mike Lane as well. When I was director of the library, he was the legislative liaison, and the library, I inherited a very difficult budget situation, and Mike was a key member of a task force to look at all of that and to help us resolve it. But also, Rich, you reminded me that how generous he is with his time, because when I was excited about running for the legislature, Mike was one of the first to reach out and have lunch to tell me all about it. So I wanted to thank you very much for your service to so many organizations all these years.
Lee.
Keep saying all these nice things and maybe I'll change my mind.
It's good to hear a little bit of the history, and Mike always provides that. And as Rich stated, we're going to miss that institutional knowledge in many ways. I want to bring things a little closer to home than maybe where we've been here in recent weeks. Just a couple things that are on my mind. February 11th, 2 hours from here, up in Utica, law enforcement confiscated a pound of fentanyl, 488 grams. And it was stated that it was enough fentanyl to kill 250,000 people. Imagine, just a short trip from here, enough of that substance to kill over twice the population of Tompkins County. In 3 years' time, 2020 to 2022, over 200,000 American lives were lost to fentanyl. And that's more than twice the American casualties in the Korean and Vietnam War combined. And if an enemy's objective were to kill Americans, certainly they found a more lethal way to do so than conventional warfare. I've lost track of the number of times I've given Narcan or assisted with its administration or been there when our law enforcement officers have given it. And I've had the unfortunate situation in my career of sitting with families to help them pick up the pieces with loved ones who succumbed to the effects of fentanyl. It's excruciating. And think about the cost to just our county government alone during this period of time. Our response, our treatments, our transports, our autopsies, the funerals that we've had to fund through social services, and just plain the costs of the lives lost and the potential ahead. And my guess it's in the hundreds of thousands, if not more, that Tompkins County has had to contribute toward the effects of that. So, you know, one point of view is that I see 4 years of inaction on the border that's finally being addressed, for good or for bad, whether we like it or not. I also want to talk to you as a responder. And one of the things that we do, there's a couple people here, you listen to these things at night when you're covering and standing by. Friday night, about 9:55, I listened to an ambulance and rescue squad being dispatched to our Code Blue shelter for a person locked in a bathroom, suspected heroin overdose. Okay, it happens. Approximately 2 hours later, responders were sent to a suicidal individual who'd doused himself with gasoline, according to the report. And the city hazmat team was responded out to a rural area to assist in the situation. Less than 5 minutes later, responders were sent for an individual in another area of the county who had been hit with a steel pipe. Less than 5 minutes later, another ambulance was sent out to another location in the county to evaluate a woman who had been assaulted. And in the mix of this, you had a hit and run accident in the city that required a person to be flown to a local trauma center. In 2 hours' time, you had probably at least 50 responders going to a number of incidences in the county on a Friday night, combination of career, paid, volunteer, law enforcement from our agencies, from the state police. That's an overwhelming night, but it's not an unusual night in Tompkins County. And I ask you to think about the intersectionality of a number of things, all within that 2 hours. Homelessness, sheltering, heroin, substance abuse, suicide, hazardous materials, violence, domestic violence, some dangerous situations out there. And I think it brings me into focus that I can get worked up over what's happening at the state and federal level, but it's clear to me that we've got some pretty serious problems right here within the county. And Mike, as you leave us, or when you leave us, those are the things that a lot of us are still going to be focusing on. But just let's have a reality check at times and realize that we've got some serious issues in the county that require a lot of effort from a lot of people and a lot of governments. Thank you.
Are there any other legislators that wanted to speak under privilege of the floor? Okay, moving on. I have a short chair's report tonight. Legislators Shauna Black, Deborah Dawson, Susan Curry, Rich John, County Administrator Corsa Akumfi, and myself went up to Ithaca College last week to meet with their president and top staff. It was a wide-ranging discussion about how we might work together and what are some of the concerns and activities going on that we wanted each other to know about. It was a very positive meeting. We believe it has been 8 years since the last time the two of us have formally met, and we both hope it will become a regular occurrence again. And then I wanted to mention that it was a good week for publicity for county legislators. There was this article about Vicky John and her husband, Rich John. They were featured in an article in the Ithaca Times about their recent week-long bicycle trip through Cuba. Check it out. Also this week, front page, Tompkins Weekly. Legislators Ann Corman, Amanda Champion, and Deborah Dawson were featured in this endearing photo right there on the front page. So just wanted to mention all that. That is my chair's report. Next up are reports from some of our staff. First up is Corsa Akumfi, County Administrator.
Okay, I have a report today. So first item, we have 2 vacancies, commissioner positions, DSS and whole health. We are currently working with Ruby in human resource and also other board to make sure to get the job description done. Our hope is to get it advertised by March 6th and also set up the committee to do the review process. We are hoping to have 2 different committees and run the process concurrently so that we can fill both positions by hopefully by May or June. Center of Government. Department have been asked to review the department needs. We met with HALT that did a presentation to us. And also after the department submit their needs, HALT will be meeting with them individually to review those needs. I think this was done about 2 or 3 years ago, and we are just going back to recheck the numbers and making sure we have everything set. The SHPO process is ongoing. Based on the information provided, we are expecting to submit it by April or May, and whatever we're going to do will be based on the approval that we will receive after the SHPO process. Cherry Street, we have completed the acquisition of the found. As you can see in front of you, that was provided. We have provided you with the development timeline that was put together by the consultant that we are working with. So we have finished point 1, point 2, concept phase development. We're hoping to finish that by March, end of March. Then we move to design, development, and due diligence between March to June, 3 to 6 months. Secure project funding, August through to June next year, and also construction to begin July next year. Some of this aspect of the project will be also done concurrently, so you can review it. If you have any questions that I have the answers, I will provide them. So Code Blue 2025-2026 Code Blue season. So county administration will commence immediate action to identify a site and operating agency for the next Code Blue season. What has become obvious for us is we do not have internal capacity to run an effective Code Blue season. DSS is not designed for that. So we are hoping to get an external agency that will assist us for next season. My hope is that we'll be able to identify provider by June or July and get it all set so that we are not firefighting as we did for this season. The other item I have here is we will be attending the NISA conference on Monday and Tuesday next week, and I'll be attending that with Bridget and Norma in Albany. So that's my report.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Corsa? Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I just want to say, of course, I really appreciate the fact that you've continued the process of sending us weekly updates on the things that you've been working on. That's a big help. Thank you.
Agreed. Okay, next up is the County Attorney, Maury Josephson.
Unlike 2 weeks ago, I do not have an extensive report. Our office is actively recruiting for our paralegal position. See if the third time's a charm. And otherwise, we continue to monitor federal developments, but pleased to have had much more time to move the business of the county forward in the past 2 weeks as opposed to fending off attacks. So hopefully that continues. Other than that, I am available for questions now or at your convenience.
Questions or comments for the County Attorney? Okay, thank you. Next up is our Director of Finance, Lori Scarrett, who is joining us remotely. Hi, Lori.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I have for you the December monthly sales tax report. I will start with some words from the Comptroller's Office on their 2024 year-end report, in which they stated that New York State overall saw an increase of 1.6% in 2024 from 2023. However, this was the slowest annual growth since the COVID-19 pandemic decline in 2020 and was less than half of the average pre-pandemic growth rate of 3.8%. Many counties and cities experienced declines. This slowing growth, combined with economic risks and potential changes at the federal level, calls for careful budgeting on the part of officials to effectively navigate these uncertain times. County collections outside of New York City grew at 0.5% in 2024 compared to 2023. However, year-over-year increases growth varied among counties, with over half, 31 out of 57, seeing increases. In your packet is the report for December, and for the county overall, for December compared to last year, we had an increase of 13.71%, with the county share matching that 13.71%. Municipalities saw an increase of 10.9%, and the city of Ithaca had an increase of 16.6%. I would like to remind you that the fourth quarter, which is December, is when they do the reconciliation for the year. So I'd also like to present the year-to-date information, which is also on the same report. Comparing the county overall and the county share, we had an increase of 0.56% for the year-over-year change. Municipalities had a negative 1.11%, and the city of Ithaca had an increase of 2.44%. Comparing this to our budget of over $45 million, we were at 99.48%, or $236,000 short of what we budgeted. At the last, I can't remember if it was this meeting or BCP, but someone had asked me the question on allocated sales tax. So I do have some figures on that. I'd be happy to send them out to you. But just so you know, for 2024, the amount that we allocated to various places was $2,371,971. And that went to various places like dispatch, TCAT, human service agencies, or Southside Community Center, Tompkins County Public Library, youth programs, and the city of Ithaca. And I'd be happy to share those numbers with you in an email. And be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments for the County Finance Director? Lori, could you repeat the dollar amount that we came in under budget for sales tax revenue?
Yes, $236,761.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. Moving on, are there any resolutions to be added to or withdrawn from the agenda? Mike, did you have one? Mike Lane?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'd like to withdraw Resolution Q, and that will be coming back. We need a little more discussion with the structure with the consortium.
Very good. Okay, then we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Let's start with the appointments. From the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee to the Workforce, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, Advisory Committee, John Halachek, III, member, and Lillian Isaacs, member. From the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee to the Agriculture and Farmland Protection Board, Randy Brown, legislator. To the Soil and Water Conservation District Board, Randy Brown, legislator, and Veronica Pillar, legislator. To the Hillview Road Landfill Citizens Advisory Committee, Dan Klein, legislator. And to the Fish and Wildlife Management Board, Veronica Pillar, delegate, legislator, and Mike Sigler, alternate, legislator. And then our resolutions from the Government Operations Committee, Resolution A, approval of the 2025 order of succession of members of the county legislature to serve in the absence of the chair and vice chair, ID number 13077. Resolution B, adoption of list of designated officers and employees required to file an annual financial disclosure form, ID number 13059. Resolution C, approval of appointment to the Tompkins County Council of Governments, TCOG, ID number 13076. Resolution D, authorization for the Tompkins County Administration Department to enter into a multi-year agreement with Velocity EHS for Safety Data Sheet, SDS/Chemical Management, ID number 13052. Resolution E, appointment to temporary hearing panels, ID 13060. Resolution F, correction of tax roll, City of Ithaca parcel number 71-6-9, ID number 13061.
I'd like to remove G, H, and I.
G, H, and I are pulled. Resolution J, budget adjustment, tourism program, ID number 13057. And from the Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Resolution K, budget adjustment, Department of Planning and Sustainability, New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, Clean Energy Communities Grant, Improving Health with Portable Induction Cooktops, ID number 13089. Is there somebody that will move the consent agenda? Greg moves, Shauna seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? That is 13-0 unanimous. Thank you, everybody. We are now up to standing and special committees. First up is the Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee, and there is no report from that committee. Next up, Downtown Facilities Special Committee, Randy Brown, Chair.
Yes, we have not met since our last meeting. Our next meeting is March 4th at 9 a.m.
Questions or comments for Randy? Next up, Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Lee Shurtleff, Chair.
F&I has not met since the last meeting, but we will be meeting Thursday morning, the 20th at 9 o'clock here in Chambers.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Lee? Next up, Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion, Chair.
Thank you. We met a week and a half ago and had a good meeting. The only thing I really want to report is that Rich John is the chair of our Ethics Advisory Board, and we are short on members, and we need people from the public to do this. I think you said we need 2 more people, or there's 2 openings. So anybody listening, any constituents, any neighbors or friends you have, this is an important board, and it'd be great to have some folks step up. They can reach out to our legislature clerks and fill out an application. Please, anyone listening, if you're an ethical person, we want you. All right, I've got several resolutions. I guess I'll start with the ones that were on consent agenda.
Amanda,
Yeah.
before you get there, could I just jump in? If there is somebody out there interested, I would be happy to talk with them. Amanda, thank you for bringing that up, because it is important we get these spots filled.
Ready? Okay. Let's see. So Resolution G, rescinding Resolution number 1999-217 regarding the publishing of limited assessment data on the internet, ID 13062, and I will move that.
Randy seconds. Were you seconding, Randy?
I am.
Okay. And you pulled it. Go ahead.
So I read this to understand what it is. It's basically that data that was not allowed or on the internet on the assessment department is now going to be allowed particular issues, and I just wanted particular pieces of data. And I was just curious exactly what those are, and so the public would know what they are.
Sure. My committee folks will have to help me remember, but I think it's address, or Jay is here. Jay can answer. I love it when Jay shows up.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, so way back when the internet was brand new, we wanted to protect people's privacy, so we restricted owner names, mailing addresses, and exemption information for everyone, and only left it open to the professional real estate community. It's still open and was available to anyone who came into our office, but we just wanted to put a little burden on any bad doers that were out there that wanted to take that information for wrong means.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Let's have a vote then. We're on Resolution G. All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Resolution H is the adoption of Institutionalizing Equity Report 2025, ID 13082, and I would move that.
Is there a second? Susan seconds. Randy, you pulled this one also. Do you want to say something?
Yes.
Please.
I read the report, and I just felt that it to be put on a consent agenda didn't give it any credit, so to speak, and I thought it was too important to do that. And so when I read the report, there's a lot there. I mean, there's pages and pages of stuff and actions and data accumulation and I feel that I'm not comfortable voting for this because I don't really understand it. So I believe in, I think, almost everything I've read in there. But I just feel it needs much more discussion than just putting on a consent agenda. And I really would like to see it come and have a real full-throat discussion about that right here in the legislature for everybody to hear. So that's my thought on it.
Amanda.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. You're right. It should not have been on the consent agenda. I should have made sure that we had it separately so we could talk about it. We did have quite a lengthy discussion at GO, and that was really good and positive. Charlene gave a presentation, our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, and we all felt it was very important in the current climate to move this forward and make it clear that we want to be collecting this data. We want to understand what's happening and make sure that we are doing everything we can to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in our organization. But I would not be opposed to having a full presentation here at the legislature by our Chief Diversity and Equity Officer, if that is something that we can work into the schedule.
Thank you. Other discussion? Veronica.
Sorry, too many objects. I was going to pull this if you didn't, Randy, just to get it a little more attention, so thank you. I guess people have said this is a really important accomplishment, and thanks to everyone who worked on it. And I would also, even though we went through it at GO, yeah, I'd love to see a presentation here in the full legislature, because I guess by its own nature, the Institutionalizing Equity Report touches literally everything in our county organization, so it's worth some attention here.
Anybody else? Randy.
I'd just like to add, I realize that it took a lot of work from a lot of people and hundreds of hours probably involved in putting this report together. The listening tour, I think it was mentioned how it was said, maybe I get that wrong, hearing people, and this has been going on for a couple years now, right? I mean, this isn't been done over the last 6 months. It's been like a two-year project. So I just don't know enough about it. So I believe in most of those things, maybe all of them, but I would like to understand really what the goals are more clearly for me. So.
Mike Sigler.
So, I mean, we have to go back longer, I think, than a couple of years. I mean, I'm going to trace this back to when this legislature decided to actually do a DEI person. And I voted against that at the time. I took a lot of heat for that. Frankly, at this point, I appreciate that we're putting forward an equity report, but as I said at the time when we were creating this position, I wanted to know what this job would do. Like, what is the metric we are going to judge whether we are successful or not successful when it comes to this job? And I think I think it's more like 5 years when we created this job, if I'm not, because I thought it was in the last legislature that we did that. That's the question that I have now is we're giving guidance to this, but what is the metric of success that we would judge this going forward? How successful have we been when it comes to diversity? Equity is, I think, a variable, and inclusiveness. I would like to know how successful we have been with that. So I'll be voting against this.
Amanda.
Yeah, just to be clear, the job position of the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer is not the question here. That's not what we're discussing. And one of the things that position has done is put together this information and collected the information. And in my mind, maybe it's because I was at GO and was able to have a conversation about it, it's pretty clear that the goal is to collect data and to find out where we're helping people, where we're not helping people, where departments are helping people, where departments could do better. Look at some of these challenges that departments are having and help them. That's the goal. And putting together this report, in my mind, would be a lot of work. And so I'm guessing that's what the Chief Diversity and Equity Officer was doing, along with listening to all the departments and talking to people and gathering information. So I'm pretty sure that that's a full job.
Lee.
Mike, you weren't the only one that took a little heat. A few months ago, I raised questions with a policy change that was being brought forward having to do with processing and handling of grants and how DEI was to factor into that. I remember, and I still am not clear on the practicality of that policy, but I remember Dr. Pillar did mention at the time that she'd like to have a conversation with all 14 of us about what our definition of equity is. And I believe stated at the time that we probably have 14 different definitions of it. So I don't know that we're any closer on that. My concern on the resolution comes down to page 48 and the implementation, continued implementation and oversight of equity and initiatives, and the establishment of an equity and diversity office will be a key goal for 2025. And that indicates to me not just a position, but probably a department. And I don't know that I'm ready to support going in that direction. But I appreciate the work that's gone into this. There's a lot here, a lot to consider. Thank you.
Katrina, let me know that it's not page 48 of the packet, but it's page 48 of the report itself. Anybody else? Rich, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I recognize the concerns raised by some of my colleagues. I am on GO for the benefit of the public and participated in the rather lengthy discussion we had there. And I can't remember who mentioned diversity and inclusion are, I think, fairly agreed upon concepts. It's pluralism, it's belonging. It's the equity word that people struggle with. And what does that mean? And it can mean basic fairness, but it also can suggest that we're going to try to do something to address past wrongs and rebalance as a result of that. And I think that's where a lot of the controversy comes from. And I don't know how well we can do that, frankly. But part of our discussion was addressing that question exactly. And I asked, what does this tell a department head they need to do in terms of hiring? And the answer is what it always has been, that you want to hire the best person for the position. what the report is trying to do in our efforts as a county is to make sure that our department heads are aware of the broader issue and have the information available to them of what is our constituent base here, and how can we think about being more diverse and inclusive while we're going through hiring as one element of it, but also management and promotion and all the other things. I want us to hire the best people for the job, but I also want us to make sure that we are trying to fully represent our community. And I think the report helps strike a balance. And after that conversation, I felt comfortable supporting it. And I would vote for it tonight, but I'd also certainly be happy to delay it so that we could have a full presentation here at the legislature so everybody is comfortable when they raise their hand on yay or nay.
I'm just going to jump in for a second, and I think we definitely can schedule a presentation on this in the future. That was going to be my question. What does that imply for this resolution? Would we pull it for tonight? Would we table it until the next time? So think about that and comment on that too as we go around. Shauna.
God, I honestly don't even know where to begin, because I feel like I'm in the twilight zone right now. And I mean, I get for some of my colleagues, I feel like it's virtue signaling right now for, it's crazy times right now. If we're really going to be an employer of choice, and we did all this work on our strategic plan, and we know what our community wants, it's loud and clear. We know right at the bottom of our letterhead, inclusion through diversity, then there's no question where we need to go and how we need to vote on this. I wasn't part of the discussion in our government operations committee, but I'm absolutely going to vote for this, hands down. I mean, I feel like we're going back to the dark ages even debating this. So, I mean, I absolutely would love to hear from Charlene. We had the conversation in budget on how we're going to approach the upcoming conversations about DEI. Veronica and I talked about the conversations we're going to have as a community, as a county, what this is going to look like from our federal funding. We can't be afraid of having these conversations. This is one of them. And, you know, I hope as a county, we're going to vote on this. And, you know, I don't know what else to say. I mean, this is something that traditionally we've been really proud of doing. And, you know, the fact that we voted on this in the past and we've been really proud of it, and now we're debating it, I think is really, really crappy. So vote your conscience. This is going to make history, and I hope we're on the right side of it.
Shauna, did you have an opinion about whether we should vote on it before a presentation or after a presentation? You don't have to comment on that if you don't want.
Yeah, no, I don't have an opinion.
Okay, Mike Lane.
I think we should go ahead and pass this resolution tonight. We've had a real good discussion about it in GO, and I think it'd be very good for the community and folks at home to have a replay of that and have Charlene Holmes come in and go over all the work that was done on this at a full legislature meeting.
Greg.
Yeah, I think it's interesting we talk about definitions. There's 3 pages of definitions in here to help level the playing field, right? I mean, it lays out what we mean by the terms that are in this framework. And, you know, I think I have to recognize that as a white man. I sit here with a point of privilege to be able to have these conversations, and others may not have that same privilege. And I think that having a framework to have a conversation amongst our department heads, amongst our community, amongst our colleagues, amongst each other, is exactly what this is doing, right? It's helping us understand what some of these terms are. It can be a messy conversation. It can be uncomfortable. It should be, but we have to be willing to sit with those conversations to understand different perspectives. I absolutely don't think this should be pulled. I think we vote on a lot of things where we get a report and we read it and we have to uptake it, and I think we should move forward. I would love to have a report and more in-depth conversation here around this table. I also think it's important that when topics like this come up, we engage with the committees that are having those conversations so that we don't have to replay everything on the legislature floor. I do believe that this is raised to a point of importance that we should recognize it here and have a more in-depth discussion. And maybe that was just sort of our failure to plan around the importance of this document. I fully support it. I would be adamantly against taking it off for a vote tonight. And yeah, I would agree with some of my colleagues that, you know, now is the time to really double down. You know, we heard from Shauna in privilege of the floor about a young person in our community. We've heard from many other people. And I don't know what the solutions are, but I know that we all need to have a willingness to sit down and understand different people's perspectives and learn something from it. And this is, I think, a start for our departments and our county to do that. So I hope everybody can vote to move this along with the idea that we'll come back and have a more robust conversation at the appropriate time.
Deborah.
Yeah, I want to circle back to something that Lee raised. This goal of establishing an independent office for diversity. What do you imagine that would look like? Yes.
So we put that in the report after we had submitted the budget request for additional staffing, and we would develop this office, right? It would be under the Office of Equity and Diversity, and there would be multiple departments that either report to it or tangentially report to it to help enhance their work, because more than likely they're working with our most vulnerable populations, the COFAs of the world, the veteran services of the world, the whole health and the DSSs. May I give like a little bit of context since we're talking about this, and because I want to answer your question. To Randy, your question, and Lee, to give you guys a little bit of clarity, we asked each department head to choose 1 to 2 equity indicators based on this guidance. And those equity indicators will be tracked over a period of time. We told them, don't focus on 1 year, think of something you can commit to. We've had an overwhelming response from our department heads who have already been doing this work, and the report has helped to guide them on how they align their work to how we see our work in DEI on the county level. A lot of the conversations when I first got here in the listening tour were disjointed. We don't really know what admin wants. We don't really know what the legislature wants. So we have this strategic plan that's our original guidance, and then we align the report to ask for these equity indicators that we can gather data over a period of time. And then that Office of Equity and Diversity will continue in the research and have that extra level of expertise to help our department heads and departments really focus that work in a way where they can see, Mike, the tangible efforts of the work that we do. So this is just laying the groundwork. This is really just floor level of let's get everything in one place, let's have guidance, let's start collecting the data, and then perhaps if we have the space and autonomy to do so, we can move in a direction where we actually have an office that's functioning that people can go to and gather the resources from. So these were all blue skies of what it could be based on what we had discussed previously during the budget and what myself and the former county administrator had discussed about what we could make of this, including our strategic plan.
Yeah, I just want to say, given the landscape that we're facing, and the funding threats that we're facing, of course I support the idea of our commitment to equity in services, equity in employment, equity externally and internally. But by voting for this, I want to make it clear I'm not signing on for adding a lot of staff to a new department, because I think that we can ill afford to do that in the next couple of years. So just be aware.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I'm from New York City. They say closed mouths don't get fed, right? So you have to ask, you have to, put it out there. I put it out there. I took a chance. You might say no today, but we might see some real work. We might see some changes, and there might be an opportunity in a couple of years, right? So I just want us to think blue skies, not close the work, but open the work up in a way that we're malleable and we're postured where we don't have to feel threatened by what's currently happening. We can continue to operate the way this county has already operated for the last 20 years. So I just took what you guys already had and I put it in a pretty bow. And I said, look at what we could do if we were to take what we've already done and enhance the work. That's really all I did.
Okay.
And Deborah, did you have an opinion about voting tonight or not?
If I thought that my colleagues who had misgivings about this would be informed and able to change their minds, I wouldn't mind putting it off. But if that's not going to be the case, then let's vote tonight.
Can I put you down as maybe? Okay, Travis.
I thought long and hard about whether I was going to say anything this evening. Some of my colleagues have done a great job in sharing some of my feelings on their own. This past weekend, I spent 4 days in Albany at the Black, Puerto Rican, and Latino, Black, Puerto Rican, and Asian caucus in Albany. And much of the conversation had to do with folks of color, underrepresented people, feeling like we're back before the civil rights era, and how, as a country, we're going backwards, and as a state, how we are under siege. And it was scary. It was a lot of uncertainty. It was a lot of anger, a lot of fear. But there's a lot of power in this idea that we can get through this together. And we lead with love and we lead with compassion and commitment to doing the right thing. We can get through these next few years. Today, I met with local folks of color. And we talked about the things that are going on at IC and Cornell and how people have to change their positions to keep receiving federal dollars and can't have certain conversations in public, can't have certain emails with DEI in them, with the threats that they will lose funding and they will lose positions. And here I sit with 14 amazing people, and we're questioning this. We are a county that's supposed to be progressive. We're a county that's supposed to lead the way. My name is Travis Brooks. So when you see my name on an application for housing or jobs, I usually get put forward. Part of that is my credentials. But my name isn't threatening. My name doesn't sound black. My name allows me to get into certain spaces. We've all seen the studies. We've all heard the stories. Just the name. When I show up, it's like, oh, damn. This doesn't look like the Travis Brooks we thought. We thought he might play a little country music. He's got dreads, tattoos, earrings in his ears. Then I have to go to work and show people that I should be in the space that I was invited to for that interview. And it doesn't always work out. I've sat in a lot of interviews where people that came in, whether they were black, or female, whether they had physical challenges, whatever, and people were like, I don't know if they'll fit in. Fit into what? What are they supposed to fit into? When you have people that don't look like you, when you have people with different backgrounds, it enriches wherever you work. It creates diversity. It creates thought. It creates a better product for the community that you serve. So I'm not surprised that we're having this conversation, but it's sad that we have to have this conversation. We should definitely vote. It should be a roll call vote. If you believe in these things, if you believe in doing right by people, if you believe in serving people the right way, why would this even be a question? I understand the department and budgets and all of that, so I'm not questioning that.
That's my only concern.
But just the idea that we would question this is absolutely crazy, especially over the last few years. I've gotten to know everybody in this space to some extent. And I think all 14 people that are in this room that make these decisions are really good people and have a lot of really good thoughts and a lot of pride in what they do for the community. So to have this conversation, to me, in 2025 is absolutely absurd.
Rich.
Yeah, Deborah, thanks for bringing up the issue of, we'll have a good discussion at budget, and I think we have to be really realistic about what we're able to do, as we are on every spending line. But I did want to respond to Shauna. I hear the emotion. And what I'm going to say, again, I voted in favor of this resolution at committee, and I'll vote for it again now. But I think we also have to recognize in the last election that there are lots of people in our community all around us that voted for the administration that is in place right now. They're here. They're our neighbors. And part of what drove them to vote as they did, I believe, is a deep skepticism about DEI. They don't understand it. They think it is doing things that shouldn't be done. And so I don't think there's truly a consensus in Tompkins County. I've read the report. I understand it. I had a chance to talk about it. I don't feel it's threatening or bad or anything else, but a lot of people do. And I think that's on us, that we need to bring our community along on this. And I would favor putting this off. Let's have a good discussion. Let's give people, the community, a chance to really hear what this is. And it's okay. This makes us better. But I don't think we can say there is a consensus. Sadly, there isn't.
Mike Sigler.
I'm a little disappointed, frankly, in some of the things that my colleagues have said. Because what they're doing is they're making this into, if you don't vote the way that I believe you should vote, that you are on the other side and don't believe in these things. You are able to be against racism and not support having a position like this within the county legislature structure. And frankly, if you want to say, oh, we're putting this all under Trump right now, no, I was against this position before Trump was in office. I just don't think we're going about it the right way. I mean, I'm hearing things from people. I think most everybody, frankly, in the country is against racism. I don't think it's actually that uncommon a belief. Are there racists in the country? Yes. Has it died off? No, it hasn't. There's still racism in the country. Is it pre-civil rights era? No. That is an unbelievable statement, frankly. To say that we've made no progress in the last 70 years, that takes me aback, yes. And so, no, I think that we can fight racism, yes, without this. I'm sorry. I thought that 5 years ago. I think that now. I think it's the job of everybody within the organization to, yes, we have to advertise for people of color. We have to advertise. I mean, people of color, the black community makes up a percentage of this community, but the Asian community makes up a far greater. Are we going out and actively recruiting the Asian community to the positions within the county? These are the kind of metrics I'm talking about. I mean, I look at the anti-Semitism that's blown up in the country, and I don't know, is DEI taking care of, is that part of the purview of what this job is? I don't know. But I do know that I need some metrics to determine whether this is working or not. And no, I don't particularly think that by saying, oh, you either vote for this or you're this way over here. No, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's a good assessment of the people that are questioning it. Maybe nationally, I don't know. I don't know what the people in Mississippi think. I know what the people locally think, or at least a good number of them. And they defend, you know, to hear racist talk locally, I see a lot of outpouring against that when it actually happens. So thank you.
Mike, did you have a thought about whether to vote tonight or not?
I don't think it matters. I think you can vote tonight if you'd like.
Susan.
As someone who was born and raised in Mississippi, that's another story. But what I wanted to say is that I didn't focus on these broader things. I was really proud that this county undertook this work. I was really happy that we hired such an amazing person, as Charlene, to lead this initiative. I think it was a fantastic job. It's a really good report. I don't really see what would be controversial about diversity, equity, and inclusion for all people, and I think that's what the report is about. So I believe we should pass this.
Amanda.
Boy. So I've written down a couple of thoughts, so bear with me. So Mike, you want data about who we're actively recruiting and who we're looking at and which communities, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what the report does.
And why didn't it do it over the last 5 years?
Because we have a new leader. We have a new Chief Equity and Diversity Officer who's putting this together. This is the first time we've put together this information. She is deeply focused on data. And go back and listen to the conversation at GO. It's all about data. It's about who are we hiring? Who are we not hiring? Are they men? Are they women? How do they identify? That's what the whole thing is. It's data. And if you're scared of the data because it doesn't look the way you want it to look, then you're the one with the problem. And I do not think it is fair, I'm sorry, I do not think it is fair for you to say it's not fair to you. Many people around this table and our ancestors and your ancestors, your female ancestors, have been put in their place for eons. And to say that we don't need to do this work, that everyone and every employee in the county should be doing this work, yeah, they should. And that's why we have this report, so we know what to do. So we know our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer is guiding that group. Why do we have a communications director? Everyone should be doing Facebook. Everyone should be on social media and promoting what the county is doing. We have a communications director to lead that. We have a chair of the legislature to lead the group. There is a leader. That's what we have a Chief Equity and Diversity Officer for. We don't know who we need to actively recruit until we look at the data. Period. This is an annual thing. This is the first time we've ever had someone pull together all the information into one place. There's all the definitions. There's all the different groups, the JEDI group, the WDIC. That's all gathered in here. These are things that we've been doing. And like our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer just said, it's all in one place now. Now we can look at it, and now you can really put out there whether you're for diversity, equity, and inclusion or not. And if you decide to vote against this, yeah, I think you're a racist. Doesn't matter what I think of you, because you're going to keep doing what you do anyway.
Amanda, did you have an opinion about voting tonight or not?
Dan.
I just needed to ask.
I think if we do not vote on this tonight, we are sending a really big signal to this community.
Thank you. Veronica.
I guess I don't have a strong opinion on whether we vote tonight. I'd prefer to get that out of the way.
Thank you.
Other people are saying some things that I was going to say better than I was going to say it. So I'll try to be quick. On one note about what voters want, are people on board with DEI or not? I can't say universally. I can say that I know what I ran on as a candidate, a number of things, but it included the importance of diversity and equity and inclusion, and the understanding that structural barriers exist and structural racism exists, and we need to actively try to dismantle that. And I got this far, so some people must be on board with that. Travis, I really appreciated what you shared, and I'm going to pick out one little thing, your example of seeing people in interviews get treated or responded to differently based on how they look. If they look outside some kind of norm, that's probably an able-bodied white man. We all saw an example of exactly that, an acted example in the diversity trainings that we all hopefully did with our required training at the end of last year. So if you want an example of what some staff are doing for DEI, it's educating us, hopefully. I think, so Amanda already said this, but I think it is an important point that a lot of the answers to the questions of what does equity really mean, like how do we know if this is going to be a success, those answers they come from the report, either definitions in it or the work that will be done beyond the report, the work of comparing metrics from one time point to another. You need the starting point to start, and a lot of things that we're not looking at, we have to create the starting point of the data now. I do actually appreciate a lot of the questions and doubts coming up. Like I get it, it's fair to say, I don't really know what equity is, I don't really know what this looks like. I mean, there is a definition, but it's still, it's a whole thing to learn. I definitely, I've had various financial terms defined for me, and it still took a while to be like, wait, what is the debt service anyway? It takes some work, and I think, I've been chairing the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which is supposed to support our workforce, but also support the legislature with what we need to know and do in order to promote and achieve better diversity and inclusion in the workforce. So I'm taking notes on some of this that I think this is probably work for our committee to support you, us, all of you in education, in discussions, in, I don't know. One thing that I've thought of when thinking about the department equity indicators is that I believe every department came up with them. The legislature itself is maybe not really a department, but we're an entity like a department. We certainly didn't come up with any equity indicators. Maybe we should. I would love to have like a legislator retreat. I trust someone to work it out with open meetings law, where we go through the process that we've made our department heads go through. I think that would be good for us, and I think it would help us understand what we're asking the employees to do, and it would also, like, we're the leaders of the county, so I think that would help. So I'm taking those notes on that. As for the equity report, yeah, we should just adopt it tonight and carry on.
Okay, I have 4 more people on the list, 3 of whom have already spoken once, so maybe we can move towards wrapping this up and getting a vote. Greg.
Yeah, many other people have said what I was going to say, especially about the metrics that are included in this report, and I appreciate Charlene actually calling that out in our presentation to GO about using data to, I believe data is not confrontational, right? And the data will tell a story. I don't personally believe that this is just about black or white racism. I would also caution my colleagues about calling each other racist or using that type of language. While you're entitled to that, I I respect your ability to speak out and stand up. I think in this conversation, it's about bringing people together. And it's about maybe you being at a different understanding than I am, than Shauna is, than Deborah is, than Susan is, than Mike is, than Dan is. But we have to be willing to have the conversations. And I think this is creating that DEI ecosystem. There's been times where I don't understand things. I never have had that experience in my life, and I've gone to others that may have and said, hey, how does this actually impact, or what are the things there? And I think it's having an openness to the conversation. And so I want people to know that it's okay to not understand, right? But I think it's how we approach our lack of understanding with the lens of this is a good thing for all people, not just one group or another, but this is good for all people, and this creates a stronger community, this creates a stronger workplace, this creates a stronger county. So I would caution those of us passionate about this issue as we talk to others, because what I don't want to do is package people up and ship them out on an island of non-believers or non-understanders and forget about them. I think we should be trying as hard as possible to bring them into the mix, to help them understand. So here to help, not going to get it right, imperfect in most things, but I think we should all come with an openness to have a dialogue and be comfortable to challenge and ask questions while still maintaining a level of respect and decorum about this, to get more people on the right side of history, which we're trying to move forward. So that's all I'll say.
Randy.
I would prefer to table this because I probably would vote for it. But I have questions about it. And the reason I removed it, because it's extremely important. And I felt that the constituents, the people in the community should know what we're doing. It should be very transparent. And to just, approve this report or accept it, I'm not sure which one we're doing, just didn't bring the meat that I thought it should. So when I look at data, I think data is very important. And I remember correctly, I read a report a year or two ago that the population of people of color in Tompkins County is 8%, and our employees are 3%. So for me, that's data and wrong. And then there was, for me, how many of those people stayed if we happen to hire them? And how do we find people of color that actually want to come work here? Where, do you start in 8th grade, or how do you do this? So because I think it's important that we do, as well as people that have disabilities or whatever the issue may be. And I just think this should be really front and center. If this is really so important, and our community is going to support this so much, and I think they do and will, that we should be having a really deep conversation about this. And it's frankly one of the things I've been disappointed about in the legislature, that we haven't had these hard discussions earlier. I just felt that we were going to, and that we were going to have these debates and come to some conclusion, which you've come to. Right? I would like to table it, and I would vote for it. If it's tonight, I can't vote for it.
The resolution calls for adopting the plan, which is the highest level of, higher than acceptance. Shauna.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to ask and make sure that in a future meeting that Charlene would actually come to our meeting and explain her role and her findings, and actually what she has found in our community and some of the feedback she's received.
Sure, I'm more than willing. I'm ready right now. If you guys, want me to present, I can do that. I guess because I'm responding to her. There was one thing I did want to say. I don't want us to focus on like the black and white, the racism thing, because this is more than that. This is about operations. Like, how do we operate as an organization? How are we measuring the impacts on our community, right? And can we do that by service provision? Can we do that by hiring? Can we do that by various different factors that were presented in the report? So I want us to think more operationally versus, you know, black and white. A lot of the times people reduce DEI to black and white, and I hope that I've been able to demonstrate to you all as your Chief Equity and Diversity Officer that that is not the default. The default is for us to just really examine systemic structures that are present, and if there's a barrier, let's remove the barrier or enhance a good practice so everybody has equal governmental service provision. So please, please, please do not just reduce it to racism, because there's disability, there's age, there's, you know, socioeconomic status, there's rural versus urban versus suburban. And I see Megan on the call. Megan, I don't want to shout you out, but I'm going to. Megan is our deputy of planning, and her team's equity indicator is examining the cost burden versus renters versus homeowners. Like, imagine the data that we're going to get from them just examining that in more depth based on different demographic types, different geographic locations, different ways that people experience renting versus homeowning. I mean, both myself and Corsa had a conversation today. I had to get a waiver because I couldn't rent here, but this gentleman got a home because he bought here, right? So, you know, those type of things can help us to attract more folks, give us more insight into how we operate. It's not based on how we feel. We actually have hardcore evidence that can support our decisions. And that's what this is about. It's not about people of color versus white folks versus privilege versus non-privilege. It's just operations.
I mean, I would love for this to be like the main event of, you know, maybe like our next meeting, Dan. You know, if we could do that.
A special presentation.
A presentation.
Yeah.
We will work on scheduling.
Yeah,
yes, for
that'd
sure.
be awesome.
I've got Deborah and Corsa, and then I'm going to ask for a vote.
Thanks, Dan. I think this all started tonight with questions about what equity actually meant. And as someone pointed out, there's 14 of us, and there are probably 14 definitions of what equity looks like. But I'm pretty sure most of us can agree what it looks like, what the absence of equity looks like. It looks like when my immigrant grandfather came here from Sicily and saw postings that said, there's no need to apply for a job here if you're an Italian immigrant, we don't want you. It's when I was applying for a job at a law school at the Justice Department, and this idiot who interviewed me, who was the chief of a litigation section, and said, oh, honey, those litigation cases are much too heavy for you to carry. It's, you know, Donald Trump constantly talking about Barack Hussein Obama, who couldn't possibly have been born in the United States. It's about the Republican Party during the presidential campaign recently passed, who accused Kamala Harris, who was vastly more qualified to be president, of being a DEI vice president. And as Charlene says, there's a lot of different ways that the absence of equity makes itself seen. But it's out there, and most of us who are not white cisgender males know what it feels like. And I'm not saying that white cisgender males are racist and that they can't possibly understand, but it's a little different when you're not a white cisgender male. So I'll be voting for this, despite my concerns about not hiring on a whole new department as we're heading into God knows what in terms of a fiscal environment. And I guess that's all I want to say.
Corsa.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that before I came in, I was watching a legislative meeting when you voted to spend $10,000 to provide shelters and bus passes for people who cannot afford it. That is equity. You're utilizing our resources to support those that are in need. And that is what the operations mean. That's what we want. That is what we want to measure within the department. How are we using our resources to affect as many people as possible? we don't look at the color or the gender just as on the narrative of it, but we just look at the details of it. How are we impacting people? How are we supporting our community? So when we come to the final budget decision making, and there's a request to support maybe showers, we have the data to support why some of our community cannot afford shower, and we want to support them. So that's the utilization of the resources, as Charlene said, the operation side of things. And that is how we want to operate. And that's the reason why we actually have our finances, and we have mandate and unmandated expenses trying to help those in need within our community, and being blended to the racism part of it or the color part of it, but supporting everybody that comes to our door. Or sometimes we have maybe a gender-defined positions as an administrator. There are more women than men. What are some elements within the job description can we tweak to attract men into those positions? And those are some of the things that we're trying to get the data to help us define some of those positions, some of those policy making, some of those decision barriers. So we are hoping that this report helps us in operations. That's why with every job description that we write, we have that equity lens, not about the kind of people it will attract, the broadness of it, the comfort level, the language, so that people will feel comfortable to apply for specific positions, and being open-minded with the approach to doing things and providing services. So I just wanted to add that as we consider our decisions today.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote unless there's a motion to do otherwise. And we had a request for a roll call vote. So let us go ahead and do that.
Amanda Champion.
Yes.
Susan Curry.
Yes.
Deborah Dawson.
Yes.
Rich John.
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi.
Yes.
Veronica Pillar.
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff.
No.
Mike Sigler.
No.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
Travis Brooks.
Yes.
Randy Brown.
No.
Dan Klein.
Yes. The motion carries 10-3. Thank you for the rich debate. And Charlene, we will work on scheduling. Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, Amanda, you are not done.
Oh, jeez. Sure you want to hear more from me? Okay. Okay, Resolution L, Contingent Fund Appropriation, Human Resources Department, Professional Services for Coaching and Diversity Training, ID 13079.
Is there a second? Susan seconds.
And I think this was just, this one and the next one are kind of a rollover from last year, ensuring that they can use the funds from last year this year, if I'm correct.
Any discussion on Resolution L? Ready for a vote? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you.
And Resolution M, Contingent Fund Appropriation, County Administration, Professional Services for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, and Compliance Assessment, ID 13056.
Is there a second? Veronica seconds.
And same thing.
Any discussion on Resolution M? Ready for a vote then? All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Last thoughts, Amanda?
That's all I got.
Comments for the Government Operations Committee? Okay, we're going to move on. Health and Human Services Committee, Travis Brooks, Chair.
We haven't met since the last meeting. We actually meet tomorrow at 1.
Questions or comments for Travis? Okay. Housing and Economic Development Committee, Greg Mezzi, Chair.
Thanks, Dan. We last met on Wednesday, February 5th here at 3 p.m. You can see the fruits of the committee work here in the packet today. Our next meeting will be March the 5th at 3 p.m. As a reminder, we meet the first Wednesday of the month at 3 p.m. I have 2 resolutions and let my technology catch up with me here. Resolution I was removed from the consent agenda, and I will, sorry, I apologize, I'm just trying to catch up.
Yeah, if you had a paper copy, it would work quicker.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be committed to sustainability like the rest of you. Resolution I, doc ID 13080, resolution to select applicant for Tompkins County submittal to New York State's County Infrastructure Grant Program, and I would move that.
Is there a second? Deborah seconds.
Happy to talk about what this is. New York State, through Empire State Development, released a, I believe, $50 million program for most of the upstate counties, or excluding the 5 downstate counties, that could seek up to $1 million in funding for a county infrastructure grant program. This allows the county to work with for-profit or privately owned projects that were shovel-ready, that depending on the number of units were created, you could either apply for $500,000 or $1 million. There was a request put out for, I believe it was a request for proposal, and I know Megan McDonald's here if I'm getting any of this wrong, where we had a number of different applicants apply. There was members from the county team that reviewed the application, scored the application based on a rubric that was in part, Empire State Development's goals, and then also aligning with some of our local Tompkins County goals. And the Woods, which was a Shift Capital project, part of the Southworks project, was selected because of their ability to be shovel ready, to have all their approvals and things in place. And the proposal would directly support 69 units of affordable housing and 24 units of additional housing for a total of 93 units. What this also does, you can see on the map on packet page 22, that this really is the first phase of many, which unlocks several hundred other housing units. So to be able to have sewer, road, other municipal connectivity come through this site and connect this first phase into and open up the possibility for many others is just another way that we can expedite projects like this through the support of state and local funds. So the county acts as the applicant, correct, Megan, and then passes this through if selected and awarded to the project recipient.
Megan was nodding.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And we ran, and we had a request for expressions of interest that went out throughout the community.
Yeah, thanks. All these different requests we have.
Yes, Randy.
Yes, thank you for clarifying a lot of that, answered a lot of my questions. And one of them was, does this go through our planning department, which obviously it does. I wasn't sure if it went through something else. And is this funding, is this the first time this funding's become available, or is this?
This is the first round, the first time they have had a program like this specifically, and there's talk that it hopes to be more of a recurring type of funding. Is that correct, Megan?
That's right. That's the rumor, at least. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's have a vote on resolution I then. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Mike Sigler, were you in on that one?
I was. Yes,
no problem. Thank you. Okay, we're going to take our break here, and we're going to resume with resolution N when we get back. So a 10-minute break. There's ice cream available in the back. It's a good ice cream kind of day.
You're fine.
Okay, we are back in session.
Thank you, Mike.
Oh, my turn still.
And we are going to start where we left off with Resolution N from the Housing and Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Dan. If I could move Resolution N, Doc ID 13085, resolution of the Tompkins County Legislature encouraging the passage of a home rule law to expand membership of the Tompkins County Industrial Development Agency, TCIDA, and I would move that.
Shauna seconds.
First, I'd like to thank Legislator Black for bringing this forward, doing a substantial amount of work on the resolution, and continuing to advocate for this through the committee process and engaging with the Housing and Economic Development Committee to get this here today. What this asks for is the passage of home rule at New York State to increase our IDA from 7 seats to 9 seats, with the hope that we can create as diverse and inclusive of a board as possible, with the assurance that we'll continue to be represented by local labor and local school districts. I do want to clarify, this isn't an Ithaca school board seat specifically. This isn't a teachers union seat specifically, but what this does is the expansion from 7 to 9 would allow for us to bring on folks that represent school district interests. They could be from Ithaca, they could be from Dryden, they could be from Lansing, they could be from anywhere. They could be from BOCES. But we think it's important because the number of taxing jurisdictions that can be impacted by IDA decisions to have a seat. And we've had a lot of discussion about making sure that there's not just all yes votes, not just all no votes, but that people come to these discussions with an open mind and understand both the immediate and long-term impacts on the economy, but also on the taxing jurisdictions themselves. So with that, I'll open it up for questions or other comments from members of the committee, or Sean, if you have anything else to add.
Shauna.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've heard very loud and clear in meeting with the teachers union, in meeting with school board members, meeting with constituents, was that there's definitely a demand for more voices to be heard on the IDA. And one thing that we did very early on was add a local union on the IDA, and we removed one of our legislator spots from that, and adding another spot to the or 2 more spots to the IDA. That would also allow this legislature to add another legislator spot if we wanted to. I know that was one of the conversations we had a few years ago. But it would allow us to codify and add the union spot as part of that. It would also allow us to, I know that Randy had mentioned adding a rural spot. It would allow us to add a representative from the school districts. And, essentially it would provide representation. So I hope we're able to do that. Just to clarify, this essentially is a resolution that would go towards, it would go towards Anna Callis, and it would go to State Senator Leah Webb, so that they could draft home rule legislation that would go to our governor's office and would be designated at the end of session and would be signed off on. That's how this would work. And it would be designated at the end of session. So it doesn't mean once we vote on this that it's, it's a done deal. it would have to be designated at that level. So I just want to make sure that everyone's clear on that.
Mike Sigler.
So we talked a lot about this at committee, actually. My main concern was we got a lot of letters on this from the school district people. And my main concern from them was it very much sounded from them like they just wanted a seat so they could vote no. Some of the folks did show up, though, and they assured me that is not the case, that they will have an open mind. So I eventually voted yes out of committee because of that. My main concern with the resolution, and I know that we'll take care of this later, is that all these seats are open. We worked very hard to make one of these seats a union seat, and I would like that to remain that way. So I know that that's something we can tackle if we do get this approved. The main reason I'm voting for this is something that Robert Lynch said, actually, and I had already thought of this. I've seen an erosion of home rule from the state. When they were trying to push through a housing thing, they wanted to take away zoning from home rule. When they are citing power plants, solar power plants and wind power plants, they've taken away home rule from towns and from the county. And then even when it comes to elections, they've weighed in and taken away home rule from us. So anything I think that can expand home rule, which is in our New York State Constitution, I think is a good thing. So that's why I'm voting for this. I will say, though, with the number of seats we have on right now, the school district could have always had someone run. We could have always had somebody from the school district on there giving that input. So even though we may expand this to 9 seats, we're still going to need people to run for these seats. And I hope people, and I encourage them to do so, because it is hard finding people.
Rich.
Yeah, I came to committee and spoke. I'm not on the committee, so I didn't vote there, but I certainly shared my opinions, and I won't go into great detail on that. But I would like to just summarize some concerns I have, and I'll preface it by saying I'm willing to vote for this resolution. I didn't vote at the committee, but I do have real concerns, echoing some of what Mike just said. If you read the emails from some of the supporters demanding that we do this, they use the same terminology, saying that the IDA has undermined the schools. And that IDAs have hurt schools. It's just absolutely untrue. Pardon me, I don't want to get hyper political on this, but it's like listening to our president talk about tariffs and who pays for them. People say things that are just not true. Since its inception, the IDA has contributed to projects that are paying $71 million in taxes every year. That's annual money that we use to fund our government. School districts, towns, villages, city. The IDA in Tompkins County has been remarkably successful in building tax base, in creating jobs, in furthering energy efficiency, in furthering affordable housing. Certainly the Community Housing Development Fund has been a tremendous success. And all of that happens because of the projects getting properly vetted and approved. I do share the concern Mike has, is that if you read some of these messages, these consistent, almost relentless messages saying the IDA is doing something wrong in creating new value in our community because of the phase-in of taxes. They seem to believe that we are giving money away to developers. We don't do that. We do not abate existing taxes. The abatement only applies to new value, the bricks and mortar that are added. And that value that abatement phases out over time, and then they pay full taxes just like any other property owner. It is an inducement to get these projects built, and that's where we've had real success. And frankly, all of the local governments need that growth, the sustained growth that we've been able to achieve. If you have people voicing a concern that school districts are hurt by the IDA, falsely saying that, you could have real damage to our economic development. I don't want to see that. I think it's important that we are serious about economic development in our community because we need it. With that said, I think it can be addressed by really carefully interviewing potential candidates for the IDA. And I hope future legislators are really serious about that, that you do not want somebody coming onto the IDA who professes things that don't further economic development goals and are untrue. With that said, I don't have any problem with going to 9. I don't have any problem with more representation. It just, I want people on the IDA that have the appropriate open mind and realistic view of what it takes to get projects done in our community. Thanks.
And Mike Lane.
Here, Rich, exactly what you said. I certainly will vote for this. I wanted to vote for it before when we had the discussion a few months, well, over a year ago. I think that it would be all right to bring on a school district representative. I expect to have a lot of no votes when that comes on. We've always been open to school district representatives being at the IDA and voicing the opinions. When I chaired it years ago, we always invited Ithaca City School District to come and talk to us. Having said that, I just would remind everybody that this is an industrial development agency. And where we've gone astray is because it's become mostly a housing development organization. We don't need any more big box apartment complexes downtown that are having hard time renting out. We need more light industrial of the kind that we used to put up at the airport. We need more of that. We shouldn't let it all go to Cortland and Cayuga and Auburn and Tioga.
Anybody else on resolution N? Veronica.
I wasn't going to speak, but someone said it's not true that the IDA has harmed the school districts, and I think none of us here probably know. It's not our place to say, and this is why it would be great to have more diverse voices at the table.
Greg.
Yeah, one of the things, and I don't know who would be best to do this, but I'd love to look at the units that because this essentially comes down to the housing piece, and I agree with Mike that we need more industrial development, light industrial, clean tech, things like that. And I know the IDA, just passed a sales tax abatement for just the type of thing at its last meeting. But I would love to look at the growth in the school district, the abatements that we've provided, the tax growth. Again, I'm not a mathematician, statistician, but I'd love to actually put some data behind this, right? How many of the units where there's been new construction and abatements provided have actually put more students into the district? I don't know. I don't want to say because I don't want to be wrong. My gut tells me it's not that many, but I don't really know. So if we're not touching the current tax level, but we're only abating new taxes, who's actually creating the harm to the school district taxes? I think it's the school district. So I want to be cautious around this without having any data. And again, I'm doing the same thing that others are doing on the other side. And that's why I wish there was somebody out there that would put something together that would help us be able to see that. And unfortunately, I just don't have the brain power or statistician capabilities to do that. But if somebody's out there watching, would love to sit down and talk about how it's actually really, impacted any of these school districts where these projects have been.
Okay, we ready for a vote? Resolution N. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Anything else from the Housing and Economic Development Committee? Anything else for Greg? Okay, moving on. Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. Veronica Fuller, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Peak met last Monday, and We heard a yearly update from the Environmental Management Council and a yearly update from the Climate and Sustainable Energy Board. So that was informative and heartening, as well as a few other normal course of work things. We heard about the departmental goals relevant to that committee, and we've got a resolution, which I guess I will move. Resolution O, resolution to support the New York State Legislature to enact the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act, S 1464/A 1749, ID number 13091.
Is there a second? Mike Lane seconds. Any discussion?
I guess, can I say this is, as it sounds, urging New York State to pass a particular bill that would move the responsibility for the costs and environmental effects of packaging and the disposal of it more onto the producers rather than the consumers or whoever ends up with it at the end. And if you have detailed questions, I'd point you to Kat McCarthy, who's on the Zoom.
Rich.
Yeah, I will not be supporting the resolution, and not because I don't support the goals, but having gone and looked at the legislation, I have real skepticism that New York State could enforce this or implement it. It's incredibly complicated and I just don't see that they can do it. It's also a situation where there's 4 or 5 other states that have passed similar legislation, but not identical. And for a manufacturer trying to understand how to package their product, having state variation is an invitation to chaos. What they really should be looking at, I believe, is an interstate compact so that there is a uniform way to address packaging that would allow a product manufacturer to do this in some feasible way. So at any rate, I support the spirit, but I won't be supporting the resolution. Thanks.
Mike Sigler.
I'll pass. Thanks.
Mike Lane.
Is it me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Rich, I hear you. It isn't going to be perfect, but we got to start somewhere. And if it's not working out, they'll figure something different. But this has come up to the legislature before, and it's been beaten down, just like the bottle bill, which needs to be improved. I'm old enough to remember when you used to go into the hardware store down the street, when there were hardware stores down the street, and buy a screw that you needed. And you didn't have to go in and buy a bubble pack filled with a dozen screws and waste most of them because you weren't ever going to use them. That's easier for the manufacturer, and they can make more money that way. But the packaging becomes the problem of the purchaser, and I think changing who has responsibility for that is a good goal.
You can buy a single nail at Agway. Mike Sigler.
I guess I have a question. I mean, well, first off, I think the number one thing this state could do is actually make, recycling processing plants, considering we used to send everything to Asia and now we can't do that anymore. And that's where we have the bottleneck, is actually processing the waste. So that's where I would think New York would want to go, even though it's a dirty job. My question is, this looks an awful lot like you're suggesting we should put a tax on these things. And I'm wondering if that's the case. I mean, the manufacturers won't be paying those, the consumer will be paying those. So that's where I guess I'm wondering, what I'm wondering about, if that's what you envision.
Did you want an answer to that, or is that rhetorical? Okay.
I guess it's rhetorical.
If you'd like, I can speak to that.
Sure.
Sure,
That would be nice,
Kat.
Kat, thank you.
Kat McCarthy, Department of Recycling and Materials Management. You're on.
Thank you. So we did reach out to a consultant industry managing principal at Resource Recycling Solutions who conducted some research on this and had pointed us to a couple reports on kind of what is the consumer going to face. And from this individual, it came forth, the short answer is that there's no evidence that there will be an increase in consumer prices. We got a pretty detailed answer about that, but I think, there's a couple different factors that kind of go into the cost of goods. Elasticity in pricing certainly is an impact there. So it was something that there's no clear correlation that there would be higher consumer prices for this. But the producer responsibility would incentivize products to be made that are more recyclable. We're handling materials right now that are mixed materials, which means that we can't necessarily easily recycle them. So having this incentive to actually design for recyclability should increase the amount of recyclables that we see in the waste stream and should address some of the costs that municipalities are paying and facing based on materials that we don't necessarily control.
Thanks.
Randy.
Yeah, I'll be voting for this, and it could be more detailed. I think that the misconception is that the producers are determining how they package things. It's not the producers, it's the retailers. So the Walmarts, the Home Depots of the world, they say, we want our packaging this way. And then that's how they do it. So I think, and quite often it's because the retailers themselves, they have huge return systems. All the Home Depots, the Walmarts, the Lowe's, they return product daily. And they monitor it, and they actually bill their producers if they ship them stuff that they can't recycle. So I think that really it's the retailers that are really driving how things are packaged. Well, thanks.
Anything else on Resolution O? Let's have a vote then. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries 10-3. Anything else from the Peak Committee? Anything else? Any other questions or comments for Veronica? Okay. Next up is Public Safety Committee. Rich John, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. The Public Safety Committee will be meeting next Tuesday, a week from today at 1 o'clock, February 25th. I anticipate we'll be talking about goals for 2025, and we'll be considering a resolution in support of Governor Hochul's proposal on changes to the mental hygiene law. Other than that, I wanted to share the jail numbers at 64 in our jail with 5 board outs. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments for Rich? Okay, you have one resolution?
I do. This is Resolution P, Contingent Fund Appropriation, Replacement Pay and Terminal Pay Reimbursement, Sheriff's Office, Doc ID 13024, and I move it.
Is there a second? Veronica seconds. Discussion. Randy.
Yeah, we talked about this in budget and capital meeting, and we were kind of going into the contingent fund pretty deep early on, it seemed to me, this and for other ones. And is there any reason that we couldn't have been made aware of this before now? Because this started 6 months ago, this expense.
Typically, you see far more of these types of resolutions in public safety, in the Sheriff's Department, because of the nature of the work they do. You do have more turnover and you have more injuries. So this is not an unusual one. The numbers are a little bit higher than typical, but we see these on a fairly regular basis. So I'm not sure, maybe there's some answer on what we did in our budget process that we didn't have more money available to respond to this, but I don't think this is out of the ordinary course.
Randy, were you asking if it could be taken out of 2024 funds, or were you asking if we could have budgeted for it?
If we could have budgeted for it,
Okay.
that's what I thought.
Any other discussion? Resolution P. Okay, let's have a vote then. All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Anything else, Rich?
No.
Anything else for the Public Safety Committee? Okay, moving along. Tompkins Intergovernmental Relations Committee. Shauna Black, Chair.
Thank you. We met Wednesday, February 5th, and we were joined by Senator Schumer's office, Amanda Spellacy, who basically gave us a little bit of an update. We also were joined by Ryan Gregoire from NISAC. He gave us a presentation from NISAC. And one update that I found interesting was that they are going to open up a casino in New York City. And so some of our casino revenue might be down for Tompkins County. I know that we typically get around $1 million for our casino revenue, so that might be down. Cornell University was here, and we did run out of time, unfortunately, for TC3, so they had to leave our meeting. We did talk a little bit about some of our lobbying goals for our group, and well, we ran out of time for that. So I did ask the group to come up with some goals, and I have not received those. I reached out to our legislature as well, and asked for any goals that we might have collectively. And I know that right now we're still kind of wondering where our federal government's going, and I know that Courses asked some of our department heads what's going to be affected as far as our federal government, our federal programs, what's going to be affected. And so we're kind of waiting to see where the dust settles. But if any of my colleagues have any lobbying goals that you would like to see our Tiger committee work on, please send them our way. We're kind of gnawing at the bit a little bit to start our work for this year. We were going to do some lobbying work next Wednesday at our NISAC conference. However, we have decided that we probably are going to take Wednesday off at NISAC because we really are not very organized, and we're going to focus on the conference. And we're probably going to attend the conference, see what the budget details are, and then we're probably going to head off after we get the details of what the budget are. Is the budget?
Details are.
Yeah, the details. Thank you, Deborah, for my English lesson today. And we'll probably make a trip back to Albany afterwards and do some lobbying afterwards. So,
Deborah.
Yeah, I think the major takeaway that I got from that meeting was that nobody really knows what's going on. Amanda Spellacy acknowledged that it's just chaos, and they don't have any idea from day to day what's going to come next. Ryan Gregoire gave a pretty good presentation on what NISAC knows about the state budget. I'm sure those of us who attend next week will learn more from Dave Lucas. But one of the things that both Ryan and Charlie Krasinski pointed out was that the governor's budget, as proposed, doesn't really account for any major reductions in federal aid, which I think is kind of a big problem. And what Ryan and Charlie both said was that it's likely that they'll pass a state budget, and then the impacts of changes in Washington will hit after that budget's in place, and the state legislature is going to have to come back into session and reassess and adjust the state budget, at which point there will be
amendments.
Well, in the lobbying, apparently, at that point, will be insane. So since nobody in Albany or Washington seems to have any idea really what's going to happen, and since under the circumstances, we don't know what we should be lobbying for, I think it's not so much, Shauna, that we're disorganized. I think it's just that everything is so up in the air. There doesn't seem to be a lot that we can accomplish right now. So we'll have to wait and see how things pan out.
Great.
Yeah, I think one of the things to take away too for our colleagues is NYSAC.org/budget. There's a great presentation in there, and they're constantly updating that with information. So if you kind of want to follow along, if you're not able to go to NYSAC, that's a great resource. There's also some information that NYSAC is putting up about the new short-term rental law around registry compliance, tax collection, and remittance, if anybody's interested there. And then the other thing from Cornell is their Town Gown Conference is going to be on April 9th at the Conference Center here in Ithaca, and their topic is going to be around housing. So that was kind of my takeaways from the Tiger meeting. You know, and I think one of the things that we need to continue to work on and figure out either at the state or federal level is around our floodplain maps and flood mitigation, dredging, you know, all of that sort of thing. I think we are unfortunately one natural disaster away from something pretty catastrophic in the city of Ithaca as it relates to flooding. So I know that there's some back and forth on, you know, the Canal Corp, the DEC, state, fed, whatever the case is. So I think hopefully that's something too we can keep top of mind, because that will have a very significant impact on members within the city of Ithaca in our community.
Any other questions or comments for the Tiger Committee? Okay, thank you. Next up is Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Veronica Pillar-Chick.
Thank you, Dan. We have not met since the last legislature meeting. Our next meeting is next week, Wednesday, February 26th at 3 p.m. And I'd like to thank everyone for approving the applications of 2 new members to WDIC today, and for the robust discussion earlier that we can jump off of for some of our work.
Questions or comments for Veronica? Okay, thank you. Next up, Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Mike Lane, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. We met on February 13th. We had the full round of reports from Lori Scarrett about our revenues. She talked tonight about the sales tax revenues. She also told us about casino revenues, which Shauna has properly mentioned, the new casino that might be coming out up in New York City. And there's still that discussion about the New York State compact for a Native American casino near Rochester, which could really impact our casino revenues. And I think our discussion, they've gone up a little, but our discussion is basically that we can't rely on these revenues. We never could, and we never should. They're nice to have, no question about it, but don't use them to fill the gaps. And the other one we had was the cannabis tax revenue, which is not very large. It was, I think, around 140,000 this year, last year, and up a little bit now that there are more licensed cannabis dispensaries in the city of Ithaca and some of the others. As far as and going back to casino revenues, the revenues there are pretty flat from what Lori told us. Lori, if I haven't said anything right, please jump in. We talked about setting up the 2 budget meetings. One will be the department head and legislature briefings with the consultant that's going to come in that administration is setting up to talk to us about budgeting processes overall, including, you know, what's this about a zero-based budget? Is that anything that we need to be talking further about? I don't think we quite found a date yet, but we're working on that.
Yeah.
Have we got a date now?
Yes, I think we got a date of March 20th.
March 20.
So I sent the date to the consultant, and I'm expecting because he gave us the date options, and we managed to agree on March 20th.
Do we have a time yet?
1 o'clock? I believe we said from 1 to 4:30. You're looking at 3 hours.
Okay. Thank you, Corson. The other meeting will be our annual budget process beginning in April, and working with Katrina McCloy. Looks like that's going to be on the 29th of April, which is a Tuesday at 5:30. Those are the main points. We did talk about our goals, and we'll be talking more about those next time. Deborah, would you like to add anything?
No, Mike, I think you got it all.
Okay, thanks.
Questions or comments for the Budget Committee? Okay, thank you. There were no individual member filed resolutions. We're up to the minutes of the previous meeting. Somebody want to move the minutes of February 4th? Greg moves, Randy seconds. Any discussion? Okay, let's have a vote then. All in favor? Any opposed? That is unanimous. Is there any unfinished business? Okay, in just a minute, we're going to move into executive session. We have 2 executive sessions, one for the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. The other will be for the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities, or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. When we come out of executive session, we do not expect to take any action. Is there somebody that would move to go into executive session? Deborah moves. Rich seconds. All in favor of going to executive session, please raise your hands. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Okay, we are recessed until we come back into executive session.